All right, I guess this is part 4 of our video on preliminaries. And here we're just going to review function notation. This is something you've been seeing since Algebra 1. I want to make sure people are very comfortable with it because in calculus we'll be using it in a way that's somewhat abstract and it does throw people off. One thing I really want you to pay attention to is when you have a function rule like this, don't get caught up on the name of the variable. Here we're saying f of x is x squared minus 2x. We're describing a rule. The input is called x, and the output for this particular rule, for this particular function named f, is f of x. All we're doing here is demonstrating a pattern, and we have to give the input a name in order to demonstrate that pattern. So f of x is x squared minus 2x. But I strongly recommend whenever you see the rule like this, in your head, think to yourself, could I describe what this is? Not using the name x, but simply the word input. So this is really saying, for this function, the output is input squared minus 2 times the input. Here I'm expressing it using the variable name x, but that's just a placeholder for input. Input squared minus 2 times input. Because we're going to see different names for this input. Maybe it's a number, maybe it's a variable, maybe it's some combination. And if you get too caught up on the name, it's hard. If you just think, oh, this is a pattern where x is just a generic input, it's much easier. Right, so do these first two. These should be very straightforward. So here the input is 3. So this is 3 squared minus 2 times 3. That's 9 minus 6, which is 3. So input and output are both 3. That's a coincidence. Here this is negative 2 squared. Remember those parentheses. Minus 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. And then we're adding 4. This is 8. Okay, now try these next two. You will notice here the input is called z instead of x, but we have a pattern. Here the input is 2x instead of x. So using the rule, just carefully think about what does it mean to take f of z or f of 2x if this is my rule describing what f does to its input. What is f of z? Well, here z is the input, and the rule says what we get is input squared minus 2 times input. If the input is called z, that's what I get. And if the input is called 2x, it is input squared, and I need those parentheses to communicate that the 2 is also getting squared, minus 2 times the input. If we simplify that, that's 4x squared minus 4x. Now try it for these last two. What would we get if the input is x plus 4? What would we get if the input is x plus h? Pause and give it a try. So the input here is this entire quantity x plus 4. And our rule is input squared minus 2 times input. Now I don't have explicit instructions here, but let's just practice simplifying this. So if you haven't done so, pause and do out the algebra. You will need to simplify algebra sometimes to get to calculus answers. There are a lot of problems where the intermediate steps are kind of a mess, and then you do the algebra and it's actually really nice at the end, but you need to be adept with your algebra to get there. So if we square out the first part, by FOIL we'll get x squared plus 4x is 8x plus 16, then minus 2x minus 8. Make sure you're distributing that negative. Negative 2 goes to x and to 4. So when we group like terms here, we get x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, now what happens here? Same idea. Input squared minus 2 times input. Here it's very abstract. There are no numbers. There are two different unknowns. But our input is the quantity x plus h. When in doubt, put the entire thing in parentheses. If we square out this first part, we get x squared plus 2xh from the two middle terms plus h squared. If we distribute that negative 2, we get negative 2x minus 2h. And there are no like terms here, so we can leave this as is. All right, let's pause to keep the video short.